So train up are my top 3 tips to creating beautiful training. Now, if you notice, this, as I said before, this is an EdApp lesson, and this is an image slider template, and we'll go more into how to use that template in a second. But today we're going to go over my top 3 tips for creating engaging, great looking, and effective training. Okay. Now, these are just suggestions. This isn't like everything that you need to know, but I think these 3 things, if you have these down in your training, you are going to be in really, really, really good shape. It kind of took my whole instructional design career to figure these things out that we're going to be going over today in the next 30, 40 minutes. So that being said, now would be a time to grab your pen, paper, word processor, and take some notes. Now, this is also available for you, this presentation. So if you don't feel like taking notes, there will be some bullet points that you can always refer to when you're making your courseware. Okay, so ready for the 3 tips? Let's do it. Okay, so here are the tips. And please forgive the exclamation points. I tend to use them quite a bit because I am very excited about these tips. But the first tip is to set it up. Okay, so what does that mean? Not just setting up your learner for success, but setting up the actual lesson in some practical ways so that your learner can get the most out of that lesson. The introduction, and as we know, first impressions are so important for the rest of the lesson. And so we're going to go through ways to do that in just a second, and you can follow along with your training, and we can create a great introduction. The second thing is to be the guide. As an instructional designer, your job, and this tasking everybody here who's making workplace training, your job is to basically hold the hand of the learner to get from point A to B. And I'm going to give you some practical steps on how to do that and how to guide your learner from beginning to end. Okay. And the third thing is make it pretty. It should look really good. It should look fresh, should look fantastic. And I'm going to show you some tools on how to do that and some resources that are so useful for anybody to use and to really make your training look like it's something people want to take. Okay, it doesn't look like something that has just been, lying in the back of the storage closet for years and you take it out once a year. That's not what we're going to be doing. We're going to really be creating training that is fresh. It's new. It just looks like it's going to be really engaging. So I'm going to show you a few tricks on how to do that. Not tricks, tips. Okay. So let's get started with tip 1. Now I'm going to keep coming back to this particular slide, but you have these now. And these are the 3 tips. Let's click on set it up. And we are going to go over these 3 specific points. So the title, you have to have a title, the objectives, setting up the objectives, and the transitioning into the rest of the lesson. And we are going to use the image slider template to do that. So let's go over this stuff. Now, I'm going to be using a lesson here that's been adapted from the content library, but it's basically about ergonomics at work. It was created by our ID Anna here. And it's really fantastic. And I did modify it to illustrate some points. So you might not get the exact one if you go to the content library. So for example, the title. Why is the title important? Well, the title does a few things. The title should first describes what lesson it is, of course, and it should be working for you. So it sets an expectation. When I click on the title, this is what I'll be learning about, right? Now, this particular lesson that we're going to be going over has 3 stretches in it that you can physically do at work at your desk. Okay, so there actually is a physical experiential component to the lesson. You could actually do these stretches just by having the lesson open. But the real key point is that it's for work. It's for us who have jobs where we're sitting for too long or standing for too long, and we don't want to, throw out our backs, etc. So that's what this lesson is about. So this title that we have here, stretching, it's not that descriptive. It's really much too general. So, but we do want to keep it short. So I'm going to make this title a little more descriptive. Stretching at work. Okay. 3 words. I'm going to make it big so it's very clear. It does a lot. It's first telling the learner, okay, what they're going to be learning, but also gives them permission to say, hey, this is what you could be doing at your desk. Okay, stretching at work. Now, the template I'm using here is called the image slider. And if you are following along in EdApp, if you click on add a new slide, and under the content templates, the image slider is this template. And I use this for every single lesson as the first slide, because there's a great little feature of it that really works as a cover. So if I have my image position on cover and I load in an image, so let's load in an image here. I'm going to use this stretching tiger. Open. Okay, there he is. If you see, the image really expands to the whole screen. It looks big, it looks splashy, it looks inviting. And it also is it sets the tone of the lesson, because it's not, a person stretching, it's a tiger stretching. That's telling my learner, oh, we might be using metaphors in this lesson. Obviously, we're not teaching tigers, it's really about ourselves. And so it's really setting the tone and the rules of the lesson. It's like in a film. If you're watching a film, the beginning is really going to show you kind of what are the rules of that film. How wacky is this world going to be, or how serious is this world going to be? So that's why introductions and first impressions are so important. Now my caption is over the tiger's mouth, so I'm going to move it, do the top. I think I'll move it to the bottom. Stretching at work. Okay, so we have our title slide down. The second thing that we need, which is probably one of the most important things, are the objectives. So what do we do next? I'm going to add the screen here. And this is so important for your lessons. You need to set the expectations for your learners in what they're going to be learning. And the reason for that are a few things. But the biggest one is they need to know what they need to know and what they do not need to know. So the purpose of this lesson is to learn these 3 stretches. Okay, so I'm going to write a very clear objective in 1 sentence. In this lesson, we will go over 3 simple stretches you can do at work. Now, this may seem redundant, right? Because we're going into the lesson and there's 3 stretches there. But I will tell you that this is so important, because if you set up your expectation early in the first slide for your learners, when they get to the next slide, which let's say the next slide is something like 50% of workplace accidents happen because people don't stretch. If they did not have their objectives here, and they just went from stretching at work to 50% of injuries are because you don't stretch, they're going to go, oh, do I have to memorize that? Do I have to know that? Do I have to walk away knowing that 50% of injuries are because people don't stretch? And if they don't have an objective, they are either going to say, oh, I have to learn everything, or I'm just not going to learn anything. There's no barometer of what to prioritize when they're looking at that fact. But because they have this slide that says, we're going to go over 3 simple stretches, it sets an objective and it allows them to prioritize that fact. So now they have this, they go to that slide that says 50% of workplace injuries are because people do not stretch. They're going to go, you know, that's very interesting. That illustrates a point, but I might not need to memorize that. It serves a purpose. It's telling me how important this is, but the real purpose that I have in my lesson is to learn 3 stretches. So now I have a context for all of the slides that come after this objective. So it doesn't look like this is doing a lot at first sight, but this is actually doing a lot for your learner's experience. So that's why it's important to set your objectives. And so every lesson, I would suggest having something that says, what is this lesson going to be about? What should your learner expect to learn? And to make that promise to them, okay, and then fulfill it. So that's setting the objectives. Now, the third part of setting it up is the transition. So what is the transition? So we're going to go over transitions a little bit more in the second tip. But transitions are important because you are connecting topics from one to the next. So in order to do a transition on our first slide, we have to look at the second slide. So let's take a look at the second slide. Okay, the second slide says, take a moment to practice deep breathing before you perform the stretches in this lesson. Okay, so it's about preparations before we get into it. So how do we transition into that? All it needs is a simple mention of preparation. So let's add another screen. I am going to say, but first, let's get prepared. And just by mentioning the topic of the next slide, it's going to not feel like it comes out of nowhere. So just by mentioning preparation, I know what to expect when I click that button that goes to next. And that means a lot to learners. Taking that extra step to do the transitions is going to make their experience just flow a lot better. It means anything that's coming next will not throw them off. So if I click on let's do it, here we are. Now we're getting ready to prepare. Okay, so to recap this, we set it up with our title, short and sweet. And you know, for your title, you may have a ton of puns and things like that. I would really save that for your lesson. I would keep your title utilitarian, meaning it just should be useful and practical, okay, and descriptive. The objectives, setting the expectations, and the transition into the rest of the lesson. Okay, so let's go into the next tip here. Okay, being the guide. Now, I'm actually going to stop sharing so that I can explain what this means. And I want to put some emphasis on this. Being the guide. So in asynchronous learning, and what is asynchronous learning? Let me stop and define what I mean by that. When your learner is not in an environment where there are 30 or 40 other people next to them, and there's a teacher in front of them, and everybody is expected to learn at the same pace, and everyone is expected to get through the training at the same time and go through each slide together. That's called synchronous learning. Okay, but we're doing asynchronous learning, meaning that your learner has the module themselves. They're usually by themselves at their computer or at the tablet or at their mobile device, and they are taking this lesson. And the biggest difference between synchronous and asynchronous learning is that there is not a teacher, there's not a trainer, there's not a speaker, it is the learner in the lesson. So your job as an instructional designer is to be that teacher, that narrator, that trainer, and that guide. And so how do you do that? The way to really do that is to guide your learner through the material. And I'm going to give you some practical ways on how to do that. So let's go back into sharing the screen, but I wanted to emphasize that you are the teacher, you are the narrator, you are taking the place of that speaker at the front of the classroom. Okay, so that being said, use complete sentences and familiar language. So what do I mean by complete sentences? I mean that you should be able to read your lesson aloud and it makes sense. It should not be, here's a title and here's a list. That title should be something that introduces that list. So for example, let's say we were talking about changing a tire on a car, and I had a screen that said, or a slide that said, parts of the car, tires, steering wheel, accelerator, brake. That's not really inviting. I don't know, as a learner, I don't know what to do with this list. It just seems like it's listing objects. But when I turn that title into a complete sentence and I say, we are going to be focusing on certain parts of a car, colon, tires, brakes, accelerators, steering wheels, that guides them and gives them context through that list. So when you can, to use complete sentences is really important because that's what your learner is reading. Okay, now that doesn't mean have a lot of text in your lesson. In fact, we really encourage you to tone down the text in the lesson. What it means is to, when you do have text, and which you should throughout, make it have a subject verb, make it a complete sentence. Okay. Also use familiar language. So another point of instructional design is that it's not the model of, okay, there's a teacher in front of the classroom and that teacher has all the authority and they know everything and they're telling us what to know. That's not what instructional design is about. And ideally, it's really about going, hey, team member, we are doing this together and we are going to get through this together and we will take this journey together. That being said, things like you statements, so meaning you're addressing the learner going, you could do this, or the next time you are at your desk, that is great. Using you statements and also we statements, because you are speaking as the organization, as the company. So you could say, we are doing this year. We're doing this together. It's not just you're the learner and you're separate. No, we are together and we are doing this together. So using those two kinds of statements, you statements, we statements, and not using, super elevated language, all of that is going to really help set the tone and the voice of your lesson and guide your learner. So let me show you some practical ways that you can do that. So here, let's take a look at this slide here. So take a moment to practice deep breathing before you perform the stretches in this lesson. It's a directive. It's a complete sentence. Make sure your shoes are comfortable. Hope you brought sneakers. But that's a conversational tone, right? So that is conversational, but it also tells the learner, hey, yeah, get ready because we are going to be doing stretches very shortly, okay? Make these stretching techniques part of your daily routine before going to work or while taking a short break, okay? There's the we statement. We spend a lot of time at work and sometimes standing or sitting for long periods. So it's saying, okay, we're acknowledging the difficulty that the lesson is trying to improve. So this could apply for anything. Usually when you have a training, there is some sort of problem to be solved, and acknowledging that problem is very good. It's a very good thing to do. It makes us feel recognized, and yeah, we are standing for a long time, or we are sitting for a long time. Think about how long it takes you to stretch before moving on to the next slide. So it's getting you prepared for the next slide. So take a second, think about it. How long does it take us to stretch? Maybe 6 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, I got it. Let's say 8 minutes. Okay, so now what this was doing here, if you take a look at this, was the last sentence and the button are doing transitions. So if we look back here, the last part of being the guide is transitioning from one subject to the next. So though we just talked about preparation, we also talked about time, and we connected that to how long does it take to do these stretches. The next slide is all about how long it takes to do those stretches. So here's where transitioning really, really helps. And I think that having your transitions as the last sentence of every slide and simply referring to what's happening in the next slide is kind of the secret sauce for like a great and effective lesson for your learners. It not only prepares them for what's happening next, but it also sets the tone and really guides them from point A to B. Okay, so that's the practical tip here, is to use that last sentence in your slides to refer to the next slide and transition in that way. And in EdApp, you can also use the button. So this one said, okay, got it. And use that button to establish that voice. Okay, so for this slide, take a look here in the answer key here. Stretching at work should take no more than 5 minutes, making it very easy to squeeze into your routine. In fact, we can do them now. So let's get into these stretches. Are you ready? To prepare, take out a mat and stand by your desk. So we're going into the next stretch. So stretch 1. So here we go. So, okay. So we went over complete sentences whenever possible, even the beginning of lists. Familiar language to make it conversational, to make it friendly, to make it encouraging. That's the kind of tone that you want to set. And transitioning. So using that last sentence of the slide or the button in the slide to transition into the next topic. And that really, really works no matter what order something is in. If you do that last sentence that refers to the next topic, it's going to flow. It's going to flow. Okay, so our third tip, make it pretty. Now I want to just talk about imagery for 1 second. Using imagery whenever possible, and especially in instructional ways, is a very, very good idea. So I'm going to just show you what I mean in this particular slide. So here we have stretch 1, alternating the knee flexion. Okay, but we have imagery, and the imagery is really illustrating what the stretch is. If you have access to any imagery that could illustrate either a process whether that be, using a different app at work, whether that be lifting a box, whether that be doing these stretches, anything that you are training on. If you have imagery that shows step 1, 2, 3, and 4, that is really, really like gold, because we know that learners have different kind of modals of learning. So some people are better with text-based learning. Some people are better visually in terms of learning. Some people are better experiential. Some people need to hear what's going on. And using imagery in an instructional way can do all those things. So for this particular diagram, we have the visual of the person doing the stretch. It's also coupled with the text caption that describes what the visual is doing. So those two kinds of learners are covered there. And then the experiential person that needs to experience it is doing it at the side of their desk. So we're actually hitting 3 kind of modes of learning here. So that's a really, really awesome thing. Now, it's not always possible, but if it is possible, if you can take that extra step, it is very, very effective. It is very effective. Because remember, in the end here, we are, as instructional designers, we're taking our learners from A to B, and this is a really great way of taking them to B. It also looks cool. Okay, so making it pretty. So imagery. If you don't have your own imagery, there are 2 really, 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 really great sites to get your stock images from. Now, instructional design has, over the decades, has a reputation for using stock imagery that looks very stocky, and it looks very corporate, and it looks very clean, and everything's in focus, and the people are all smiling, and people can spot a stock image from a mile away. But there are 2 sites called Pexels and Unsplash where that's not the case. So I'm going to show you Pexels, and it's pexels.com. If you type in stretching, you'll find these pictures here. There are so many of them. And there's our tiger, by the way. And what Pexels is it's amateur and professional photographers who just want to get their stuff out there. So everything here is royalty free. You can use it, you don't need to sign up, and it's all available to you. And the best part about it is it doesn't look like your typical stock image. Okay, so for example, this guy, he's not in the center of the frame. He's not wearing corporate, the suit. And yeah, it's somewhat artistic even. So things like this and photos, you will find so many great photos on Pexels and Unsplash. And another pro tip, if you click on any of these, so if you click on him, for example, if you want to download the photo for EdApp or any authoring tool, you go over here, you click on Medium and click free download. You're not going to need a bigger size than Medium. Okay, so that's Pexels. Unsplash is really the same thing. So let me show you that. It's the same kind of idea. It's actually almost an identical design. There's your search bar at the top. If you click on the image, there's the same thing. There's a drop down where it says download, and you can do Medium. Okay. Okay, so those are Pexels and Unsplash. What else do we have? The next thing is Canva. So in EdApp, anywhere you go, anywhere you can upload an image, there's a Canva integration. So if I click on design on Canva in the integration, there is, I can use it here. So I don't even have to leave EdApp to actually use it. So you can go to photos, you can type it in, and you can upload a photo from here. If you have the budget, I would highly recommend using a pro account, because the Canva Pro account actually gives you thousands of stock images that are very specific to whatever you're training on. So for example, for the content library, when we were making a lesson on conveyor belts, I was thinking, oh, how are we going to find this imagery for like a factory and conveyor belts? And we just typed in conveyor belts and we had hundreds of videos of these things. So it can get very, very specific. And another thing that Canva has is that if you click more, there are actually integrations with Pexels. So you don't even need to go to pexels.com that I just showed you. You can actually click on Pexels and it has Pexels right here. Okay, so those are pretty awesome. Let's keep moving on in the lesson because I want to get to the GIFs here. So the second slide, here we go. This is the comparison slide. Notice here, excellent, you've got this, one more to go. See the last technique. So we're really connecting with the audience here, and we're encouraging them, and we're telling them where they are in the lesson. It's like, there's only one more left. So if you're sweating, don't worry, you can do this. And here's the last technique. Okay. So here we are in the last technique. We actually have videos here. So I'm going to click on this video. And the video is showing the stretch. So this is the kind of imagery that's like gold. So if you have a video of a certain process, if you're teaching about something on a computer, if you have a screen capture, the visual instructional aspect is really, really great. Okay, but the problem with this video is a couple of things. One is that videos take up quite a bit of memory. It's sometimes can be hard to compress them into something that's small enough. And also, if I'm stretching at my desk, I have to keep pressing play here on the video to repeat and repeat and repeat. So there's an alternative to this, and that is making a video into a GIF. So what that would look like is like this. Okay, so this is the GIF version. So this is one rotation. He's repeating forever. I do not have to keep pressing play on this GIF. GIFs, so just to stop for a second, you've probably definitely seen GIFs just going online and going on social media. And there are many different genres of GIFs. They're usually funny. They're usually taken from television or movies, but they can also be taken from any video file that you have. So if you have a video or a screen capture of a process, making a GIF of a small part of it can actually be very instructional and very helpful. So I'm going to show you a quick couple of things here. So on Canva, if you go to more and go to videos, you can actually find a ton of videos. So if I click on, type in stretching, there's going to be a ton of people stretching and videos of it. So this guy, here he is, he's stretching. And I can actually download the video from Canva, just like this, or I can make a GIF out of it. Now you can download a GIF version of it that wouldn't have sound. There's also this amazing website called easygif.com, easygif.com. We use it all of the time. I do not work for easygif.com, but I can't tell you how easy this tool is to use and how helpful it is. So it's basically a website where you can upload a video and turn it into a GIF. I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to click on video to GIF. And this is easier to use than any app I've downloaded or anything like that. And it's something that we're here daily. So here's the loop of him doing, here's the video clip, the few second clip of him doing that stretch. I'm going to open it, click upload, and then I'm going to click convert to GIF. And there it is. This is the GIF that's used in the lesson. It came from the video file. And here's the video file if you want to see it. A few seconds. So those are really, really useful. I think that if you have Canva Pro account, oh my gosh, you have like 75% of every stock image you could ever possibly want, maybe 90. Okay, so that is about all the time we have today. I know this was a lot. There are three, those are the three tips though. If you have any questions, I'm sure Bobby and people have been answering them in the Q&A, but if you have anything pressing, I can answer it now. But I would like you to also consider posting it in the TrainOn powered by EdApp LinkedIn group. And what that is, it's connected with a series. The series is called TrainOn. The TrainOn group is designed so that people who are not instructional designers can go to a place and speak with or ask questions to instructional designers. So right now, there are about 170 or 180 this morning instructional designers and L&D people who want to help you out. So if you're in L&D or instructional design, please come and join. And if you are not, also please come and join and post your questions there. And these guys will give you advice and answer your questions. Okay, I'm gonna